KoitCast.
Hi, Bruce. Welcome to KoitCast.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing super, super lush today, and yourself?
I'm fine. Yeah, I just took a walk. I do my daily walk, and yeah, so I'm good.
Excellent. And where'd you go for your walk? Through the woods or anything? Anywhere nice?
Uh, there aren't really any woods around here. It's very suburban, but I do walk up a hill that's a by a wash here in Southern California, up towards the mountains, and it's a really nice view, and it's got some historic and mystical value to it. So it's that's where I do my spirit walks too when I
Oh,
do that. I
nice.
didn't do that today. I just did the regular walk. So,
Is it
but
anywhere near the Batman cave? Because I've been there in.
no, but that would be cool. I would like to walk near there.
Yeah, it's quite
Yeah, I'm
decent. Yeah, I
further
enjoyed that.
out. I'm further east in the
I
San
gotcha.
Gabriel Valley. Yeah,
All right, so some quite some distance away then.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so Bruce, hey, thank you for coming. Really appreciate your time. Can you give the audience, anyone listening or watching, an introduction to you? So, who are you, where you from, etc.
Yeah, okay. Well, my name is Bruce Olav Solheim, so you can tell from the name that I'm Scandinavian, and in fact, my parents were from Norway. I was born in Seattle, grew up with both Norwegian and English languages and Norwegian culture, and steeped in deep in Norwegian culture, big Norwegian community in Seattle. My parents came over after World War II. So I grew up with stories about the German Nazi invasion of Norway, April 9th, 1940. And they came here in 48. And then I had two brothers and a sister. All of them are gone. So I'm the only, and my parents are gone too. So I'm the only one left. Um, but I have four children, two grandchildren. I've been a history professor for over 34 years, I think now. And I'm married to Ginger, and I'm was in the military 6 years, active duty, jail guard, and also a helicopter pilot.
Oh, nice.
I was a defense contractor for a while for Boeing. Had a top secret clearance at one point. Did a lot of academic, I got a PhD in history, wrote a lot of academic books, and then I took a sharp turn in in 2017 after an experience with my friend who had passed away, a childhood friend, also a Norwegian American, Gene. He died and came to me in a vision and said it was time for me to start telling the complete story, not just my academic life and all that. So I started, I had collected all the stories and hadn't told them to very many people. And that's when I started writing my paranormal books, which I've written a number of them now, and comic books too. Sometimes I put it into fictional form because you can say stuff that you can't say in the nonfiction. So, and hide it behind the fictional characters. So I do both.
Nice one.
And yeah. So that's just a brief version of what I've done. I mean, I've done other things too, but that's
Well,
yeah,
we'll
that's
get into a
basically
lot
who
of
I
that,
am.
to be fair, Bruce.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll go into all the bits that you're creatively input into, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Was that event in 2017, was that your actual paranormal introduction? Or was there something else prior in your life that you put, oh, that was weird, and then you squirreled that away, and then, oh, a ghostly something, and squirreled that away?
No, it's a lifetime since age 4, paranormal
Right.
events, and including you know NHI alien type stuff, all the way back to age 4. But it was September of 2016, after a month after my friend Gene's death, that I had this vision of him. And when I say vision, it's kind of the best way to describe it is like a hologram. That's what it looks like to me, the
Okay.
experiences I've had like that. And it was communicative. I mean, it was an intelligent thing. It wasn't like a replay of something from my memory or something. I was awake. And he told me, I know about all your experiences, and I'm telling you, it's time. The time is right. And of course, he was right because just a year later, everything broke loose. The New York Times
Mm.
article about secret retrieval programs and secret UFO programs, all that kind of stuff. So it was just a way for me to feel like it's okay. And so I didn't have to hide it anymore. I didn't have to worry about a security clearance or being ostracized or losing my job because I'm past retirement age now. What are they going to do to me? Tell me to retire? I'll say, okay, thanks. It's
Yeah,
been a
I'll have more
blast,
money then. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll take that. I'll be a pensionist. That's okay. So I'm not worried about that. But before it was career mindedness, security clearances, worried about that kind of stuff. And Gene reminded me that hey, it's time and it's important and there's a mission behind it. And which there is. It's a very important mission. So I'm very thankful for people like yourself who will entertain my stories to present them to people and consider, for their consideration. I know a lot of it's hard to fathom, but when you've experienced it, experiencing leads to believing, believing leads to more experiencing. So it's like you keep going through more and more doorways, the deeper you get into it. At the same time, I know I'm probably going on too much, but
No, it's okay. You
just
carry on.
stop me at any point. But I'm very grounded because my wife Ginger is a very practical person, kind of like my father, very practical man. Did not like any of this kind of stuff. And my mom she was very spiritual and she was psychic. So that's where I get it from. Obviously, it comes from that. So, for instance, I used to do, we would take a deck of playing cards and practice telepathy with each other. When I was a little boy, like 7 or 8 years old,
Hmm. Oh,
I
you
remember
have.
her
Ah,
doing
there
that
you are.
with me, and
Sorry, you'd
my
frozen for
dad
a
would come
second.
in and tell us to put it away. Oh yeah, my dad would come in and see us doing this mind reading stuff, and he'd tell us to put it away. He didn't like it, so. So that and it's not that Ginger's hostile to this stuff. It's just that she's very practical. I'll tell her some mystical experience I've had that's mind blowing, and she'll say that's really wonderful. But today we have to do this, this, and this. And I go, okay, you're right.
Yeah,
So
she's that
I think it's
skeptical
important to
side
be.
that you need. That's the thing.
Yes, I love skeptics. I do. I think it's
Mm,
very important to have that. So you have a natural filter. You just don't float off into the ether somewhere and never come back.
exactly. That is 100% correct. Now,
Yeah.
I'm stuck on that phrase, the time is right. So I want to ask
Yeah.
you a question about that. When
Yes.
he had communicated that to you in
Hmm.
whatever experience that was it in your
Hmm.
mind, by the way? Had you seen him? Did you see him talk? Did you hear him? Or was
Yes.
it mind stuff?
No, it was I saw him like you and I are talking, except if you were more of a holographic image,
Gotcha.
and you're not in my walk-in closet, that's where
Well,
he
not
was.
now. I was earlier, but I'm not.
Yeah, maybe so. But yeah, so but the yeah, so that's what it was. And well, I'll tell you the first thing I said, I was, surprised, but although I've had this kind of experience before, it's not like the first time. But I said, "Oh, Gene, it's so nice to see you." And I said something that probably a lot of people would say. I said, "What's it like to be dead?" And because
Yes, I
it was
like
a
that.
month on after his death, physical death, and he said, well, he laughed and he said, "Well, uh, it, if I was really dead the way you said that, would I be communicating with you right now? I mean, do you think there's something else?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I know there's something else." And then he laughed again. He said, "Well, you already know then. You know the answer to that question." And he said, "I'll tell you this, where I am, there is no past, there's no future. It's all just happening all at the same time." Which I understood it, but I didn't really fully understand it until I felt compelled to start understanding quantum physics and quantum, and I'm a historian. I'm not a scientist, So, and I thought, oh, well, that is basically what they're talking about, the subatomic world, that none of the stuff applies. All this linear stuff that we have in our everyday waking reality doesn't make sense. So that's what he just said. That's the easiest way to describe it. And then he added a little funny little jolt there to me. He said, and by the way, Bruce, it's all true. And I said, Gene, what are you talking about? What's all true? He said, everything. It's all true. And so that really blew me away, and it still blows me away because I've
But
said
that's
that to other
cryptic,
people.
isn't it? Because that could mean
Yeah,
anything.
yes, it could. It could. Yeah.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I communicate with them not every time I go do a spirit walk, which is about once a month now because they're really draining. And I can explain that later if you want. But
Please, yeah.
uh, and then I record them so I don't record their voices, but my voice hearing what and seeing what I'm seeing. I record that and so I can transcribe it later because when you're in a meditative state, you don't always remember what has happened, what's transpired. I learned that kind of early on. I started doing these things regularly. But anyway, that was yeah. And he said that the time is right, and I understood what he meant, that I didn't have to fear it anymore. And I think in general, society is breaking through this stigma, although there's still stigma. There's still people that think I'm crazy. Obviously, I mean, I write books and stuff, and I have people put very cruel comments on there. But I mean, everybody who's out in public gets that. So you
Yes, I
just
get that.
comes with the territory. You got to have pretty broad shoulders, to deal with that. But you just can't focus on that. If it helps somebody, that's what counts, And people who are vicious are going to be vicious no matter what you say. So if it's not you, it's somebody else. And I've even had interviews that were vicious,
Really?
uh,
Why?
and it was very well, one guy, I'm not going to mention names, but
Sure, sure.
it was kind of early on after I wrote my first book back in 2018 or 2017, whatever it was. And he had been a former network executive with one of the big three networks, television and radio in America. And I guess he had been demoted or something happened. He was a very bitter man. But anyway, I didn't know that going in. But he had this radio show, and it was kind of a shock jock kind of thing,
Okay.
like Howard Stern kind of a thing. But he was even, he was kind of like the original Howard Stern, a lot meaner. And I was telling him, what had happened to me, and he said, "Well, this is pretty hard to believe." And most people, more than likely, have been sexually abused as children, and that's probably why you think this is happening. It's not real. You know that, right? You're probably sexually abused as a child. And I thought, what am I going to do with that? I mean, that's
Hmm.
very rude. The opinion's very rude, and assuming the answer is yes, that's not the purpose of the discussion, you know. So I had to make a decision at that point, and I said, "Am I going to address that, or am I just going to say you're rude and this interview's over? I'm sorry." But I decided to plow through it, and I said, "Well, it's really none of your business, but I did have a traumatizing experience as a child, but that doesn't discount because I was having these paranormal things before that."
Hmm.
So it's not like that caused this delusional mental illness, because that's what he was inferring, that I was a mental illness caused by that.
That's a very
So
narrow-minded approach from that person anyway. He's
yeah,
presuming
so
rather
I
than questioning. Daft.
I think I handled it okay. And anybody who was listening who had a traumatic experience as a child would have heard me standing up to him and said, "Okay, that's what I can do." So I want to help people with how I respond to things, because it's a minefield out there, it really is, and you have to be careful and think of yourself, but also what is the mission? And the mission doesn't come without perils,
And this is what
So
I want to get into, right? The reason I,
yeah.
I latched onto the time is right. I have a couple more sub questions based
Yes.
on that, and then we'll go into the mission and then what you see
Yeah.
that as.
Mhm.
But the time is right. Here's my sub question: is that for you or for the world?
No, it's for the world. I just happen to be, and I'm not saying I'm causing it. I'm just in it. You know, I am involved in it, and the timing was right for everybody. And I think we can
Gotcha.
see that our institutions, government institutions, societal norms, all that stuff is evolving. And actually, the NHI alien contact that I have calls it what does he call it? He calls it a leap of consciousness is going on, not a leap of faith, which is, different, although could be related to it for some people, a leap of consciousness. And people are, like this documentary that just came out, The Age of Disclosure or whatever. There's a lot of
Hmm.
that kind of language, that's being used that indicates that a paradigm shift is taking place, to put it in historical terms.
So just a
And
different mindset switch
yes, it's
across the
starting to
board,
change,
sort of thing.
and there is resistance, obviously.
Yeah, clearly.
They even in traditional societies, indigenous societies are just going, "Oh, you're just now figuring this out." That's basically like Native American folks that I know, or Aboriginal people, and talking about dream time in Australia. I mean, it's hey, we've been there, done that, got the
Yeah.
T-shirt. You
Now you're
know,
late to the party. That's it.
yeah,
But
you're
we
late
got
to the
there. We're
party.
still at the party. We've knocked on the door, just late.
Yeah, exactly.
The second question is, you had your visitation telling you, hey, Bruce, the time is right. Do what you
Yeah,
need to do. Were
yeah.
others getting the same message at that point in time, do you think?
I I believe so. I believe they were, because there were people who, like the New York Times writers, who suddenly took a turn. I'm Facebook friends with Ralph Blumenthal, who was one of
Oh,
them. I think
okay.
Leslie Kean was the other one. I'm not
Hmm.
Facebook friends with her, but she's probably a little more well known. But they're both pretty well known. But I think they all felt compelled, and that's the way I look at it. Like people ask me, like, when you create a comic book or decide to write a book. And I always stop them. I say, I don't decide to write a book. I'm compelled to do it. There's forces way beyond me, that are saying this must be done. You are the conduit by which it's going to occur, by which it's going to come into being. And that's how I feel it's happening. I think I was listening to a podcast about creativity, and they were talking about the ancient version of genius, which I hadn't thought about before. People, when we talk about genius, we talk about, oh, they're genius level IQ, math skills, whatever, writing skills. But in a like, if you talk about the Romans or the Greeks, when they said a genius, they were talking about tapping in to the genius. The genius is outside of you, and you become one with it, and you become the conduit. You have certain skills, obviously, writing skills, speaking skills, musical skill, whatever it is, but you have tapped into that. I think the old days they called it a muse, but
Yeah,
that's
the
the
knowledge
old,
field, skill field,
yeah,
whatever it is. Yeah.
yeah. That's the old-fashioned version of genius. We've made it much more materialist. It's like, it's exactly what you can do and what scientific training you have. All that is wonderful, and it's necessary, obviously. But there's also tapping into something beyond that can enhance, if you can match those things up, the modern science and that view with ancient knowledge, and being able to contact the genius. What a wonderful world it'll be if we can manage that.
Agreed. Here's the next question for you. You
Yeah,
said a consciousness leap, and I know that's just a phrase.
yeah,
It can't perfectly describe something because it's just two words.
right.
So, um, from where and to where, or from what and to what?
Yeah, the best way I can describe it is that what we're experiencing right now is an interface. This is our subjective reality, and it's kind of like a computer keyboard. It's like the interface. The computer keyboard is the interface to what's actually going on, the toggling on and off of voltages and circuits within the machine, which we don't see, but that's the reality of what's going on. That is the
Hmm.
objective reality. So we don't often see the objective reality. Most people don't day to day, because it's our interface, how we properly attire ourselves or address each other or go about our day. But occasionally we'll get little reminders that, maybe a deja vu experience, maybe a ghost, whatever. We'll get, oh, wait, there's something beyond this. This is our what we're used to. And then there's the objective reality, and which is the quantum reality. That's what Gene was talking about. There's uh, what I think David Bohm, the American physicist, quantum physicist, he called it let's see, what did he call it? There's this reality, then there's that. Oh gosh, I forgot. Anyway, he said there's three different things. There's the everyday reality. There's the quantum world, And then there's this super objective reality, which some people would call the mind of God or the great one. The Zen Buddhists would call it the one, whatever. So there are these three levels. And we're mostly living in this first level, the interface, with occasional glimpses of the quantum world. And what through meditation you can enter that quantum world, which, by the way, is where ghosts reside, where all the paranormal stuff happens, and where NHI and aliens and a lot of the UFO stuff that hasn't popped in to give itself a glimpse for us here, that's where that resides too. I think Whitley Strieber said in one of his books, and one of his recent ones, he said that uh, maybe the aliens exist where our dead go, which I thought was a really cool way of saying it, which I totally believe. They're in the same realm,
So you're
operating in the
saying
same.
this leap of consciousness though is from this part of
To
reality glimpsing into another bit, or are
to
we
to
raising
accept it.
towards it?
Yeah, to accept it and utilize it to our benefit and realize that a lot of the things think are so important in this physical subjective reality aren't really as important in the cosmic landscape, in the quantum landscape, that there's much more important things. Not that we have to do our jobs here, our roles here. Obviously, got to keep one foot in and then one foot in that quantum reality.
Well,
And
this is something I've always struggled with, right? Which is, and I've
yeah,
asked other guests this. If we've
yeah,
got this reality here, say we're a small circle, right? And then outside
yeah,
of us is this quantum reality.
yeah.
Why are we getting glimpses of that if we're here to do a job? Because if we suddenly know all of that, how does that benefit here?
Well, it can enhance our mission on Earth, what we have to do. I think it could make us, in my case, I'll just be very concrete with this,
Hmm.
um, to be a better teacher. I'm a professor of history, so uh, I think that glimpsing the quantum reality, the objective reality, has made me much more understanding, has made me much more sensitive to others and the plight of others. It has made me much more compassionate. And if you talk to people who have had a lot, this is very similar to what happens to people who've had near-death experiences, which, by the way, you are in that quantum objective reality when you're there. They come back uh, and they're changed. They're forever changed because they see what's really important. And the same thing that Gene told me, and what my NHI contact says is that the most important thing you discover in that reality is that love is the most important thing, which sounds very new agey or 1960s, kind of, or Beatles, love is all you need. But basically, it's more complicated than people think. Because if you accept that, and this is what I tell my students, that I'm making this very concrete. So because that's how I approach things first. And at the end of every class that I teach, I say, whether it's online, video class, or in person, I'll say, and remember to keep love in your heart and always operate from a position of love. Now, that's easy to say, and it's easy for me to say, I guess, but try living that because it comes into play with everything you do. If you accept that leap of consciousness, that grasp of that, then it changes your approach to everything. And everything doesn't become as mundane or doesn't become as I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for there is, but anyway, it changes your perspective. And with that, I think can come a deeper understanding and maybe the ability to solve a lot of the problems that we have. The main one being conflict, violence, that type of stuff that is just ongoing and accelerating as we speak right now. I know there's a number of different things going on that seem not to make any sense, but when you look at it as a struggle between people accepting the sleep of consciousness and people resisting, I think that's where it's at. And I don't know if that makes sense. I guess I kind of wandered off
It
there, but
does. No, it's
I hope
okay.
I hope it does.
It's
Yeah.
the question I've asked a lot of people, and I get the same answer, and I get it. What's hard
Yeah.
for me on a personal level is right
Yeah.
is when you say things like love is all not the Beatles thing, but it's
Right.
all about
Yeah,
love
I
and blah
know.
blah blah. I
Yeah.
get it, but it's hard to grasp the meaning of it
Yeah.
because that means you'd have to be, do you know what I mean? So full of
Yes.
love for everything, and that's
Yeah.
difficult for people to do because you're down in a world that is essentially trying to kill you from every angle, right? So your
Exactly.
defenses are up everywhere.
Yeah. And
It's a
and
difficult
the
one.
idea, yeah, no, and the idea of tough love too. People talk about that as parents, that sometimes you have to practice tough love, and that is hard to do. I used to be a jail guard. And that is a very hard job. I mean, it's a terrible job. I've seen things. I started in the military as a jail guard. At age 20, I was seeing things that I should have never seen at age 20. But a lot of people in the military do, whether they're in
Mm.
combat or not. I was never in combat, but I did on a regular basis have people try to kill me. So that kind of puts you on edge.
Mm.
And you can go two ways with it. You can become as hardened as a lot of the criminals that you deal with, or you can try to understand where they're coming from and protect yourself and your mission, which is custody and control of the inmate, and your fellow guards, So that's what you have to learn is how to balance that. And I had to learn how to like have this invisible bubble over me where I don't have to live the horror that I saw. I could go home and not live that horror, and that was very difficult to learn that. And so, yes, it is about love, but it's much more complicated than it sounds. And I'm not saying that that I'm an expert at all. I just have glimpsed what I know is the only thing that we can do, but putting it into practice is very, very difficult, and it's a daily struggle, just like a relationship. If you are in a relationship, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship or a marriage or whatever, excuse me, um, it's a daily struggle. You might say, "Oh, I love you," but then how many challenges will come that day, which will try to pick away at that, and you're going to have to be pretty up armored to be able to deal with that and
Or,
realize.
or you say, "I love you slightly less today, honey,"
Yeah,
than
it's
the
just to
day
be
after.
honest.
Yeah,
Honesty is very important in love. It is. It's very important, and that's where I think a lot of people get this idea of romantic love it's kind of almost artificial, in a way. I think it was actually, if you go back in time, it's kind of from the Romantic age in literature or whatever, this idea, and it's kind of unrealistic. I mean, you watch any reality show on American television, excuse me, The Bachelor or The Bachelorette or whatever. And I always say, oh my gosh,
ignore.
I don't think this is not good for people. This is not good at all. They're all focusing on the wrong things. But anyway, so yeah, I can understand it. And it is very difficult to grasp. And I like to hear uh, old couples talking about how they've made it. And one of my favorite stories, it's kind of a joke, but there was this one old couple, and I think they've been married 60 years. 60 years. That's amazing. And they were asked by a person who's a therapist or whatever. They said, I'd really like to know what's the secret. Have you ever had an argument? And they both said, oh yeah, we've had one argument. And he said, oh, one argument. That's amazing. One argument. And they said, yes, one argument that's lasted 60 years.
And
So
who's
it's
who's
it's not.
winning?
Yeah, yeah. See, there is no win. It just keeps going, but they triumph over that to keep going, and that's the secret, I guess, and that's what I try to relearn every day.
Well, fair play to you. And now it's time to learn all about your mission. So,
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
can open that door and walk through for me.
yeah. Well, it comes with this contact. I've been referring to my NHI alien contact, and he has a name. His name is Anzar. And I realize that for a lot of people, it's like, oh, that always sounds like a strange name. People, they have channeling or what. I don't call it channeling, by the way. I don't even know really what that is. I know what it is, but I hear and see things on my spirit walks when I'm in a meditative walking thing in a very uh, conducive area for it on my daily walks. And the mission is to learn as much as I can about what is going on in the world. I'll give you a very concrete example.
Hmm.
Uh, I, I, I am I am here to help people as much as I can with whatever I have where I am. So that's what I'm doing. That's in a nutshell what my mission is. But specifically, using my these God-given, I'll just say it, God-given talents, I can tie into my NHI contact, my friend Anzar, and I can do something like what I did for the intelligence community in January of last year. And I think I mentioned this too, that I can talk about it. I'm not going to go into great detail, but I tell you and your listeners about it. Uh, it was actually prior to January, so actually the end of 2024. I have a friend of mine who works for one of the agencies, actually a contractor for one of the agencies, and he needed some help. He knew what my abilities were, and he said, "Yeah, we're trying to locate uh, this Iranian general. He's gone missing." And we don't know if he's been killed. Do you know? And that's he was doing. And I said, well, I'll try. I'll ask my friend Anzar. And I was given a bunch of information of real time, like where he was, what his condition was, and I passed it on to my friend. Turned out that's exactly what it was. Now I don't clap myself on the back and say, oh, what a brilliant person I am. I'm just saying, aren't I lucky to have this contact, um, who can help me get this real-time information. And it was helpful to my friend because they were formulating policy. It didn't have anything to do with an attempted assassination, because I don't want to have anything to do with that, because
Sure, sure.
sometimes that's what people do with what we call now remote viewing. It's the same kind of thing. And then he said, can you now that you've done that, we're wondering, can you help us locate and know something about the condition of the American hostages in Gaza? Which, I mean, there were a number of hostages. It wasn't just the Americans, obviously. And I said, well, I will try. And I was able to get grid coordinates. I was able to peek into through Ansar, be able to peek into where they were, describe their location, describe the captors, what they were, not so much what they were saying, but what the intent of what they were saying, what the conditions were like. And it was very scary, and it was very unnerving. If you can imagine what it would have been like to be a fly on the wall in one of those tunnels, or in a holding cell, or being terrorized. And I knew all of it. I saw all of it. It was awful. I wrote it all down. I wrote down the grid coordinates. I wrote down the location. I located it on a map. Uh, and I had all that information, and I was going to give it to my friend, and he said, no, 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 wait, no, don't give it to me. I don't have the clearance for that. You need to, I'll put you in touch with some people. So that was December, right? January, I keep getting more information because I'm tied into these three Americans, by the way. And January, I get a phone call, a mysterious phone call from a number. I didn't know what it was. And the person said, yeah, we heard that you could help us with some information. And I said, well, who are you and what do you mean? And they said, well, it's in Gaza. We heard that you can help with these Americans that are there. And I said, okay. Oh, excuse me.
Do you need to get a drink
Uh,
or anything, or you're good?
yeah, yeah, I can help. And I have very detailed information. But I need to know, who are you? I can't. For all I know, you're the bad guys. Who I don't know who
Yeah,
you are.
yeah, like you don't want that.
So they said, well, we're USG, U.S. government. So that's usually, I mean, anybody could say that, but that usually is an indicator that, okay. I said, well, that's fine. I can. And they said, well, we could meet in a local coffee shop where you are. And I said, that's not a good idea for a couple of reasons. One, in the local area at the coffee shop, I'm likely going to know everybody in there, and they're going to wonder, who am I talking to? So your whole thing is going to be, I don't know why they would even suggest that. Maybe they were testing me. I don't
They
know.
just love coffee. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, that could be just coffee. And so I said, no, I would like it to be a secure facility, because that way, I would know that they're for real, that they're real. They would have to show credentials, and I would go in there and have to show my ID and all that. So they agreed to that, and it was a secure facility. It was a government office, FBI office, actually. They met me at a cafe near there, not too far, maybe 10 miles away from where I live. And I met these two, and I didn't know, they didn't show me any credentials, but they said, okay, you come to this building. It's an FBI office. So I knew one of them was FBI. Um, so they told me, okay, when you leave the cafe, we're going to go this way, you go the other way. So I went the other way, and then they said, just go into the lobby, and the FBI agent said, I will meet you there. And the other one disappeared. I don't know. I went into the lobby, and there was the FBI agent. She was very nice, very pleasant, and she said, okay, I can get you into the building. We went into the elevator. She had a secure, there's one floor where you can't get off unless you have a security badge. So we got off there, went out. It was a metal detector, someone behind bulletproof glass. I showed my ID anyway. Then I got escorted through and into a secure room. Oh, and they told me I can't have a phone with me. And so I didn't have a phone with me. And then I went into the secure room, and there was the other person. They were already in there. And they closed the door, and I started to get really nervous, although I knew they were real. I mean, they were US government people. It wasn't some foreign terrorist organization or foreign government. So I felt secure about that, but I didn't know what was going to happen. And they said, okay, yeah, so what do you have? And I had all this detailed information, all the transcripts of all it was probably about 20 pages of documents, and including maps and grid coordinates and everything. I gave it to the other person, not the FBI agent. And then the FBI agent showed me her credentials. So I said, oh, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I turned to the other one, and she just looked at me. And then the FBI agent looked at me and said, they don't show credentials. And then I knew who that person was. Because if you don't show credentials, that means you're more than likely NSA or CIA. They don't show credentials. And so anyway, they were looked through it, and then they started asking me questions, and then and then we got into sources and methods, how do you get this? And I talked about Anzar, and I was talking about it, and then I said, they kind of looked at me, but they didn't like say, you're an idiot or you're crazy. They just looked at me, and I said, I hope you don't think I'm crazy. That I hope you understand this has been going on since I was a kid. I mean, I've had these experiences, and I want to help. I mean, these poor people are suffering, and I want to help in some way. And they said, no, we take it seriously. We understand. She was taking copious notes. I mean, just on what I was saying. She was asking me questions. And then I had mentioned my friend. There were actually two people I knew that had been involved with agencies, and they had kind of coached me a little bit. And so they said, oh, yeah, we'd like to know. And I asked them, would it be okay? They knew I was going to meet this person. They were the ones actually that suggested go to a secure facility so you make sure it is the real person. And so I mentioned their names, and I had got permission to tell these people who they were. So because they wanted their names and phone numbers so they could check them out, and make sure I was legit,
Hmm.
which I knew I was, but so an hour and a half interview, uh, very grueling, very nice. They were polite, but very serious. You could tell it was very time sensitive. Obviously, this is January, you know, of last year. And so we were about to, convene. And I said, I know you're probably not going to ever talk to me again or whatever, but could you like just have somebody send me a thumbs up or something like a little, those little icons, just so I know that it was helpful to you? And they said, yeah, we could probably do that. And I left, and I never heard from them again. Uh, and I tried. I still had the number. I would call, I would text, and it finally just died. It was obviously a burner phone that was being used. Uh, but 2 weeks after I met with them, the first hostage was released 4 weeks later, the second hostage was released. And then in May of last year, the third hostage was released. So I don't know if I played a role at all. They never, and I talked to my friends who, knew about this stuff, and I said they never gave me any acknowledgement or never said anything or did, even the thumbs up. And he said, oh, they laughed and they said, that's exactly the way it happens until the next time they need you. And you'll never know when that is. You'll get a phone call, and next thing you know, you're meeting with somebody, and it'll be the same thing. They're not going to tell you anything, you know,
Well, it's a
because
sad
that,
thing for you because that means you can't verify or corroborate what information you
right.
had was accurate.
Yeah. I just say it's circumstantial. That's all I have is
Yeah, yeah.
circumstantial. It's like, but it seems very, I'm looking at it from the perspective of the captors or the people, the Israelis and the Americans we're talking to or whatever. It's like, if they would have been trying to negotiate the release, they might have, could you imagine these negotiations and somebody pops in there. Yeah, we know exactly where they're being held, and we know what's being said, and we know the identities of. They might embellish, and say we know so and so is the guard or whatever, and we know that they're hiding in a UN facility or what. They might say something that the people would go, oh, they have eyes. They have eyes in our organization, thinking very down to earth, like they have eyes in our organization, when actually it's remote viewing,
Hmm.
which is the beauty of remote viewing. You're not putting yourself in danger other than psychically because it is very, I mean, I have to tell you, it was so disturbing. I mean, it was nightmares, everything else from seeing what I was seeing and feeling what I was feeling. Because
I'm
I was
glad you just
feeling,
said that because that was going to be
yeah,
one of my questions. Are you
yeah,
feeling it too? Meaning it's more
yes.
mediumistic.
It is mediumship in that sense. You do, but everybody has a different, some people have stronger like physical feelings. Some people have stronger, emotional feelings. Some people are very visual. Some people are very audio. I have a little bit of everything, but for me, it's very visual. So I will hear things, but I'll also see. And then I started feeling what they were feeling, and some of the emotional pain, and just a little glimpse of that was enough to make me where I had nightmares about it. I'm
Hmm.
fine now, but uh that's why when people ask me to, and I this happens all the time, people will say, I saw you on such and such show, could you contact my Uncle Harry? He died 2 years ago, and I'd really like to know that he's watching over us or whatever. And usually I'll say yeah, and I'll try to help them, but then I give them a caveat. I'm not always right. Sometimes I make the connection, sometimes I don't. And I don't take any money. I don't take any money for it. I didn't take any money for what I did for the agencies. I just want to do it because I want to help. That's the mission. I think that's the best way to describe the mission is I want to use this contact I have and the natural talents I have, this gift that I've been given, to help. And that's what it's there for. And I don't hold people in contempt who are professional psychics or that work with the police, and that's their job. I have a day job. I'm a teacher. Uh, so I don't, I mean, if somebody was, if it was some, wealthy thing and they said, here's a bunch of money, it's not like I'm going to leave money on the table, but I'm not asking for it. That's not the purpose of it.
Sure.
Uh, I mean,
Right
I
now,
am a capitalist,
I have
so
yeah, of course. I mean,
yeah,
that's where we
yeah,
live. Um,
yeah, yeah,
I still want to know who or what is Anzar. So I
yeah,
know it's a non-human intelligence. You've mentioned that.
yeah,
What is he, her, they, them, all that malarkey? Where
yeah.
did it or he or whatever come from? I.e., is it a human?
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? So what
Yes,
can
I
you
know
best
exactly what you mean.
describe it? Because it's a strange name as well. So
Yeah, no, it's very
go for it.
strange. I asked Anzar once, well, I'll tell you this. Let me go back to 1997. Um, I had a vision like the one with my friend Gene. And by the way, his last name is Torkelson. He's Norwegian, and he was an actor. I always like to say that because he wants credit. You know how actors, they want the credit. So, and he was funny, he was talented. But anyway, 97, I had a vision, not unlike that, the whole, visual, audio uh, of Anzar. I didn't know his name was Anzar then, but revolving in space. And he kind of had He's very tall, very kind of, I would say almost a cross between a classic alien, tall alien gray, and a proto-human, kind of a cross between the two, if you can imagine that. And he was revolving in space, and I this is a very peculiar vision. Why am I having? And then he said, he told me, I am the progenitor. That's what he told me. He said, I am the progenitor, and I'm here to help. Here to help you understand. And he went into this whole explanation and it sounded very Zen-like to me. It's like from this universe through a black hole into another reality and a quasar comes another dimension, another universe, and so forth and so on. He was trying to explain all like this cosmology to me. I'm a historian, I'm a storyteller. That's what I do. I'm a writer, musician, and for me, it was like really testing, stretching my ability. I love science and technology, but and then other stuff was like there couldn't be love without hate. There couldn't be war without peace, and this whole yin yang thing going on. So it was very philosophical too, but very high-minded and very philosophical. And I wrote every word down that I remembered. I even drew a picture of him, and I had it, and I just kept it to myself because it was so weird. Even though I had these experiences all the
Have
time,
you
I
got a
wasn't.
picture of him now? So have you got an artist impression that
I
you could send it to
do.
me digitally and I'll put it on screen. You don't have to show it
Yes.
now. That would be good if you could do that.
Yeah, yeah. So I will, yeah, and it's on it's in my books. I have many artist impression and my original. I want to show you the original one that I did. That's still on the paper that I wrote everything down on. Um,
Well, if you've got it
but anyway,
handy,
so
by all means.
that was in 97. Yeah, I don't have it like
Oh, okay,
handy
don't worry
in
then.
my,
Don't worry.
but anyway, so the that was in 97. I didn't say anything to anybody. I just kept collecting all my stories of all the remarkable things that were happening. And then in 2001, yeah, 2001, I felt I think, and I was obviously a bit premature. The time wasn't right. 2001, I had a colleague of mine, an anthropologist, and she was Icelandic. So I thought, okay, kind of, simpatico there, Scandinavian or Nordic. So let me talk to her about it. So I showed her the picture, and I said, uh, "Yeah, this is Anzar, or no, this is the progenitor." I didn't know it was Anzar yet. This is the progenitor, and this is what he told me. And I showed her the picture, and she was grading papers, and she looked up. She had these like funny little glasses, the half glasses, and they had a chain around them, Uh, and she looked up and she says, Bruce, you're a pretty spacey dude. Has anybody ever told you that? You're pretty spacey. And this, mind you, this is a woman who uh, was an anthropologist who studied ancient religions and ancient peoples and all that. And she was very accepting of the magical world or whatever. But she thought I was spacey. So I said, oh, no, that's okay. We don't have to talk about it. So I got scared off and I said, okay, that's it. I'm not going to. No, if she doesn't want to talk about it, then I'm not going to talk about it to anybody. And it wasn't until after the experience with Gene that I decided I would do that. Now I do, if I know I don't want to get up in the middle of the interview. I do have
Sure.
the original drawing, but it's like on the other side of the room in a
Go on. You
folder.
have to get it now. It's almost law.
Yeah, so if you can pardon me just for
Yeah, that's fine. Go for it.
okay, okay. I know it's unusual, but
I'll do a
hang on
song and a
just a second.
dance while you're away. Go on.
Yeah, little,
You won't see it. We'll do it.
hand, yeah, shadow puppets. Yeah. This is actually, well, I'll show the first, this, I typed it up after, this isn't the handwritten version. This is the typewritten version of what he said. But here is, I drew it on like a Post-it note. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, it looks chimpish, doesn't it?
Yeah, very proto-human, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and kind of like a tunic, a coarse, I described it as a coarse tunic, coarse cloth tunic. Yeah.
So it's
And
not really an alien then. It's more an ancestor of humanity, would you say?
a progenitor, like he
Yeah.
said, a progenitor, the first, the one that brought everything about. And so that he's been depicted other ways. Lucinda, who we both know, who spoke very highly of you.
Thank you.
She is the only other person that's seen him that I know about. And she described him as looking Native American. That kind of well, the story is that, well, what happened, we were in a meeting, uh, close encounter resource organization meeting in Huntington Beach, California, at a Denny's of all places. And I asked Anzar, will you come to this meeting? Because I want somebody else to see you, not just me. I want to, you always want validation, confirmation, so when you're into this kind of stuff. And so I asked him to come with me. And the whole meeting, nobody said anything. And then after the meeting, I said, okay, before everybody leaves, did anybody see anybody with me? And nobody said anything. And then Lucy was on the other side of this long table eating her French fries. And she looks up and she said, yeah, who's the big, tall native dude behind you? That's what she said. The big, tall native dude, perfect California, dude, right? And I said, that's Anzar. That's Anzar. You think he looks like a Native American? Yeah, he kind of has almost like a Kachina doll. If you've seen the southwestern Indians, Native Americans, they have these Kachina dolls that they're very tall and kind of interesting looking. But anyway, she said he kind of had that look to him. And and then I said, that's Anzar. That's him. He's with me. I asked him to come with. And she goes, you're kidding me. And I said, no. And then she said, this is unbelievable. And I said, why? And she said, she took out her wallet out of her purse and she showed me her driver's license. And on her driver's license was her home address. And she doesn't live there anymore, but uh, her address was on Via de Anzar. That was the street she lived on.
Nice. Synchronicity there.
Yes. And she's the only other person that I know of that has seen him. And she's actually communicated a little bit with him when I was in some discussions after I learned I mean, I knew by that time that his name was Anzar, but because of further communication. But he was talking about integration. And I mentioned that to Lucy, and Lucy's, she is in a Native American tradition. She's shaman or shamanic practitioner, right? I guess officially. And she said, you be careful with integration because what does that mean? You got to be very careful with that. You don't want to lose your autonomous self into this, whatever this is. She said, I don't think he's, malevolent. I think he's benevolent, but, you still should be careful. So I was very careful and that, started the process of integration. What it did is really just make it easier for me to contact him. The way I look at it, it's like we set up a hotline, the old Cold War hotline to Moscow or whatever we had from Washington, D.C., after the Cuban Missile Crisis. That's basically, it's a hotline. So if I wanted to talk to Anzar, it's like that. It's not, I don't have to go through a bunch of mystical incantations or something. Not that I would anyway.
I'm glad you
But
mentioned Lucinda's cautiousness about
yes,
the integration, and we'll talk a bit more about
integration.
that in a second. Because one of my
Yes.
questions was, how do you know this intelligence is what he or it claims to be? Because surely that projection of an image could be just a projection of an image of
Yes.
it.
No, and that's what I always tell people whenever they say, "How do I get into how do I approach this?" I said, "Well, it was happening to me. I didn't, I think the first line of my first book after the gene experience was, it's not that I believe in ghosts, it's that they believe in me, so I have no choice." And that's basically what it is. I'm compelled. It's like writing books. It's like I didn't invite it. I didn't say, "Oh, I'm going to have these mystical experiences for the rest of my life." This just started happening, and it was very random, and it was frequent but random. And what I've done since the gene experience is learned how to manage it. I never say control it. I always say just manage the experience. So now I forgot your question. I'm sorry. I know
That's
I was
okay. I,
on.
I was about to restate, which is,
Yeah.
how do you know this intelligence is what he or it claims
Yes.
to be? So
Yeah.
presumably, since then, you would have had subsequent encounters which have all turned out to be positive in nature, presumably.
Yes. Yes, everything that I've been, all the communication, all the advice, all the remote viewing assistance, I call it assisted remote viewing with him. It's all been very positive. He always reminds me to keep love in my heart. That's where it comes from. To keep love in my heart and always operate from a position of love. So I always, people who have said, how do you know this is not a demonic entity? Assuming there are
Hmm.
entities, how do you know it's not demonic? And I said, well, a demonic entity, and I have had experience with those too, by the way, so I know the difference just by personal experience, by accident. But anyway, they would not be saying that, and they would definitely not be doing good. They would be convincing you should do something maybe not good. And so, and then the contact with Lucy, who's a very good person. I think if she suspected that at all, even though she said she didn't say to be cautious of integration because she thought he was malevolent, but because just for my own sake, do you want to lose yourself in, you got to be careful taking that step. That's all. Be use discernment, be careful. Um, that's a word she uses a lot. And so I took that advice and I was very cautious and careful. But that's how I know. It just keeps on going and it's always very positive. And he's given me very good advice, like whenever I get into that tendency of wanting to predict, the future events, he's always told me predictions can be wrong, but preparations are never wrong.
Right.
So,
Why can predictions be wrong if there is no time? Therefore, everything's happening all at once. Predictions have to be accurate.
well, because you never know which timeline you're going to be on. It could be accurate if you end up in a certain timeline, and it could be, in a certain path, or I call them forks in the road of time, you know, and these could double back as well. So it's much more complicated than I can even describe, I think, in my feeble attempts to describe it. But this idea, you never know which reality you're going to be in, which interface you're going to be in, the one that you live, So, and it could explain, how people talk about the Mandela effect, which I think is a rather interesting. I haven't done a lot of research on it, but this idea that you absolutely know this didn't happen yet, or that something happened, but accordingly in the reality you're in, no, this didn't happen. But I have a memory of this thing happening. How can that be? And then other people have the similar memory. And it's kind of like that. I know I'm kind of scattered here, but that movie, once again, back to the Beatles. What is that movie? Where
I know the one you
the
mean, yeah.
yeah, where the Beatles never existed.
Yeah, it's
This
one of their
idea,
song titles. I can't remember exactly what it
yeah,
was.
yeah. So anyway, it's kind of fascinating idea, but so that's why it can be very tricky. It can be very tricky. So my understanding is that yeah, you could be correct, and sometimes psychics are correct, but more often than not, they are they are incorrect, and so you have to be very careful about it. But preparations are never wrong. Like I knew that something like before COVID, something terrible, that there was too many. I think what it is reverberations back in time from many different divergent realities that were coming back saying something big is going to happen. I didn't have all the specifics, but I started to do some preparations before it happened, and luckily we were okay, and my wife and I, my family were okay. But I've had so that's the best way I can describe it. Why predictions can be wrong, and I know it kind of
But if you
seems
question that, if you,
contradictory.
yeah, it does.
Yeah,
Because if you question that, right? Let's just say that the
yeah,
multiverse is how we would
yeah,
like put it in our brain to make
yeah.
sense. Here's a branch. Do I want to go out that door or this door? There isn't a door there, by the way. But I'm just giving that example.
Right,
There's
right.
one or zero, and
That
then
that you know
both
of.
should
Yeah,
exist. Yeah, that I know
yeah,
of. Both should
yeah,
exist.
yeah.
So if there's a place that exists, i.e., this source place
Hmm.
or next level, whatever we want to call it, knows everything because there is no time, they'll see both of them in theory. So they should be able to tell you which path you're going to take, and therefore all predictions are based on the path that you're going to take, and then, oh, so he's going to be going left, right, left, right, left, right. Ah, there's the answer for that reality. Here's my prediction, and it should always be right.
But
Does that make sense?
well, it does. But the where the difficulty lies is that there is also free will. It's not all deterministic. It's not already determined. So we still have free will. So we have a choice, but that choice will lead us in a different direction. So they could say, maybe they could have a caveat and said, okay, I can give you a prediction that this is going to, I don't know, let me say something that's not controversial, that the stock market will double in a week or something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then I go and throw, I don't have that much money, but let's say I put it all in the stock market, whatever. And then it crashes, and I said, well, I thought you told me, yeah, well, yeah, but the decision you made a decision thinking that that was going to happen, but in a different reality you didn't, so you were okay. But you made that decision, and I don't know if that makes sense, but the idea that we still have free will, so we don't know which outcome we're going to be in, if that makes
Yeah, I know
sense.
we don't, but they do,
Right.
presumably, because they're seeing it all.
They
That's the bit
do and
that
they
gets me.
yeah, they do and they don't because they don't know which one we're actually gonna choose at any one time. That's the
Yeah, but
thing.
I'm choosing in a moment in time, aren't I? Let's just say
Yeah.
I have a choice of door A or door B. At this moment, right now, I'm choosing door A. It's already
Yeah.
happened to them because it's all happening at the same time that I've chosen door A. So they
It
should,
well
therefore, they must know that prediction.
the explanation to me is there's too many variables. That's the term that I've been told. Too many variables involved and free will, which makes it much more complicated, which goes beyond my understanding. I'm just gonna tell you that I don't have an in-depth enough understanding to understand actually how that works, but I've been told there's too many variables. You could be right, you could be wrong. And even though, and they're not omniscient either. Ansar is not omniscient because I've asked him, I said, are you omniscient? No, not omniscient. Even though there's no time, that doesn't mean they know all what's going to happen or whatever. I mean, even though it's happening all at the same time, it could be beyond them because there is something. I said there's something, obviously something beyond you, and he goes, yeah, of course. And which brings us to the question, who is he? But I don't know if I adequately answered it because I don't understand myself. I
Well,
just have a
you're a
rudimentary.
human. You're in a human
Yeah,
experience, right? So I don't
yeah,
expect you to know, but
right.
because you can't, can you? You can't know
Yeah,
everything like I can't. It's impossible. We're
right, right.
it's grains of sand. But you
Yes,
understand my thought process.
I do.
That
I
they
do
live outside of
because
time, therefore they must know everything that's ever been and ever will be. That's my thought pattern. Is all.
they they're in that realm, but that doesn't mean that they have access to everything. I think that's the best way that could
Yeah,
be.
then
At
that can
least
be
they
the only
don't.
answer. Yeah.
At least the one that I'm talking to. Now, I don't, if somebody has another one they're talking to that, I mean, they probably wouldn't be talking to you and me. They'd be doing something else.
Well, they
Not to
should
say
be
that
talking to me and you. We're highly
well,
important.
I know I just made us sound very unimportant, but I'm sorry about that. But they would be, doing whatever they're going to do. I don't know.
No, that's
But,
fair enough. I am
but
still
here's,
stuck on who is this guy. Was
yeah,
he
yeah.
on? Was it on Earth or was it away that then sent a seed here or something like that?
Well, well, this is I asked him, I said, I called him an alien once in our interchange, and he said, he corrected me, and he said, have you ever looked up the word alien, what it means? And I said, well, I just assume I know what it means, okay, I'll look. And I looked at all the definitions in the standard English dictionary. Most of them were not good, you know. They were kind of negative in tone and negative in meaning. And he said, how would you like to be called an alien? And I said, okay, I give up. What do you want to be called? And he said, Star Family. And I said, well, that's interesting because isn't that what the Aborigines say? Isn't that what the Native Americans say? All these indigenous people, they say the Star people, the Star Family, that we're all part of one family. And he said, exactly. And I said, are you saying that we're related? And he said, he told me an aspect of you is an aspect of me. That's the way he put it, an aspect. But he didn't say, I'm your long lost cousin, whatever. He said, an aspect of you is an aspect of me. And he said, that's why my latest book I call We Are the Aliens. In other words, we're all one family. That's what I always say, star family. So going back to this name, Anzar, and why he was coy at first, he called himself the progenitor, the first, the one that started things, because we all, people on Earth came from another place. I asked him, I tried to pin him down, where do you come from? And he said, Orion. And he said, haven't you wondered why you're always looking at Orion? And I said, oh, I was going to show you another thing that's kind of interesting. It's right behind me, if
Yeah,
I
do
can show
it.
it to
Go
you.
for it.
Yeah, my whole life I've been fascinated by the constellation of Orion. And he said, haven't you wondered why you've always been so drawn to it? And I said, well, it's a kind of a prominent constellation. He said, well, yeah, beyond that. Other people don't seem to be obsessed with it like you. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, that's where I'm from. And I said, where in Orion? You know? And then he said, the Rigel system, which is, if the Orion the hunter, right?
Hmm.
The bottom right, where his leg or foot would be, is the star system of Rigel. So that's where he said he was from. But anyway, this when I was 15 years old, I made this comic book myself. And look what
I
it's
like
called.
it.
I spelled it differently.
Oh,
I
right.
spelled it
All
with
right.
a
Yeah.
Y, but I was obsessed with aliens, as you can see, and Orion. And so I remembered that and I thought, oh, I think I still have that old comic book and that I made when I was 15, when I was in high school. And so he said that's where he's originally from, and I think that's where uh, all of us may be from. And and that's as much as I can get, and that he was involved with the seeding of this planet.
So I
So
was right in that respect then. But also, you were also right when you said alien. You didn't have
yes,
a negative connotation in your mind when you said that.
no,
It was
I did
just a
not.
word
I
to
did not.
describe not from this planet, right?
Right.
So he must know your intentions if you're connected psychically.
Yeah.
Or can he not reach into you to understand intention?
No, he understands me pretty well. I'll give you another amusing thing. A couple of years ago, I thought I was starting to I was studying quantum physics and I was getting really not cocky, but I was getting, oh, I'm kind of getting this. It's all meshing together a little bit, for me as much as I could with my limited capabilities. And then I went outside like I do every night and I looked at the stars. I was looking at Orion and I said, you know what? I'm really starting to understand this a little bit more. And then I heard his voice. I always know, and he said, oh, you have no idea. It was very humbling. It's kind of like an advisor, trusted mentor advisor kind of thing. It's like, yeah, you think you do, but there's a lot, there's so much more. And so it kind of knocked me down to size and, thinking, uh, yeah, it's better to be humble about all this stuff, and because we all just have little puzzle pieces that we're trying to share with each other. Well, hopefully people are trying to do that. I think our government is not doing very well at sharing their puzzle
Agreed.
pieces, but
Does Anzar
but
have all the pieces? Or is it like you mentioned earlier that he doesn't know everything? He might
he
have, say,
doesn't.
50% puzzle pieces.
I don't know the percentage. I could ask him, but I don't. He doesn't have all of them because and then I did some research. Before he told me his name was Anzar. Which was shortly after I started doing these spirit walks after the gene experience. So maybe back in 2018 or so, something like that. I was already publishing my first book on my experiences. Um, I Now I lost my train of thought. What was I? I
You
was
mentioned his
gonna,
name, puzzle pieces.
yeah, yeah. I did. I started doing research on the name Anzar, And I found out that in Morocco, that's the god of water, of rain. That is who they that's the people from Morocco, the Berbers, or they prefer to call themselves the now I forgot the name of them. But anyway, they're also called the Berbers in North Africa and Morocco. Their chief god, they celebrate this every year as the god of rain, which is pretty important to people in North Africa, is Anzar, spelled the same way. And and then I found out there was an Anzar high school in Central California. And I thought, why? That is really weird. Why? Well, it was at a town that had a one of those original California missions that the Franciscan missionaries put, when
Okay.
Spain was here on the West Coast. And that guy, that missionary, and I can't remember his name, but he came from the Basque region of Spain, which is connected to the Moroccans, the Berber people during and that's not my period of history. I'm more modern history. But anyway, the when the Moors invaded Spain,
Hmm.
and they're connected to the Basque people, and the Basque people uh, are a very unusual people in that they have the highest percentage of Rh negative blood in the world,
Yes,
which
yeah, I was told this by another guest, actually, funnily enough.
yeah, and which I have. I have Rh negative blood, A negative, which is like 6% of population, world's population, I think have that. So, but so there's all these interesting, connections, and I had a scholar actually from Holland contact me and said, "Did you do research on Anzar before you picked that name to call him that?" And I said, "Well, let me tell you, I didn't know about Anzar. That's not my period of history. I don't know Moroccan history, and I was shocked when I learned that that was very important to, their god of rain or whatever." And and he said, "Well, that's very curious that that name came." And I said, "Well, I didn't make it up. That's what he told me his name was. He first said he was the progenitor, and now he's Anzar, the progenitor, which so now he's just Anzar. I guess we're on a first name basis, but so that's kind of the genesis of that, and I just find it so fascinating how things tend to just start make these all these connections keep happening the more I learn, and I'm just fascinated by it. I'm learning every day. Every time I take a spirit walk, I learn more. Um, but and the spirit walks are basically about the mission, trying to help. And by the way, I do teach a paranormal personal history course at my college, which I'm surprised they allow me to do it, to tell you the truth. I didn't think they would. I thought that, the board of trustees that govern the college, they're not known to be adventurous, They're very stodgy, people, very nice people, but stodgy. And when they said, "Oh yeah, you can teach that course." Now, it's not a college credit course, it's a community education course, but I taught it since 2018. And then during COVID, there was a break there where we didn't do it because we couldn't meet in person. And then it's been very slow to come back. But I still have students that took that original class that want to take it again. In fact, it starts the end of this month, um, starting it up again. But that's part of my mission too, and what I found out when I offered this class is that I had 35 people in the first class. I was very shocked there were that many people, and they ranged in age from 18 to 80, all races, all backgrounds, all walks of life. They all had one thing in common, and that's they wanted to be taken seriously. They wanted a safe place to tell their story and try to put it in some kind of context that makes sense. And here I had misunderstanding the whole purpose of this class. I went in there academically. Okay, this is the research. This is what scientists have done. This is what, all this psychical research that was done going back, and the history of spiritualism in America. I had this whole prepared lecture. And then I found out, Dr. Solheim, or Dr. B, as they call me, we just want to tell you what happened. So, so what I learned is that half of the class was them telling what happened to them. The other half was I introduced, okay, what is telepathy? How does it work? Do a little experiment, have a guest speaker. So I had to modify the class based on what the mission turned out to be. It turned out to be a little bit different than I thought it was going to be. Even though
That's just
Ginger
that. Do you know what that
understood it.
sounds like to me? That just sounds exactly like if you took a random set of people,
Yeah.
you're going to get half people that will lean towards logic, and
Hmm.
you're going to get half that lean towards emotion and personal experience. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
essentially left and right of the human experience, and I think that's played out in your class there. I like that.
Yeah. It's that they're wonderful people. And because it's community ed, they can take the class over and over again, which some of them did every single time I offered it. They took it, and they're still going to be back. And some of them are professional psychics, which I don't think says that I'm something special. I think it says that they also want to
Want to
talk
know?
about things
Yeah.
outside of that, the client experience. And it's been a great experience. We do little experiments, like a very simple one that anybody could do is I call it is somebody staring at you experiment. And everybody says, I feel like somebody's staring at me. And a lot of the times people turn around, there's somebody staring at them. How do you know? We don't have eyes. That, a materialist view would be, how would you know? So we did an experiment, and everybody was, I'd pair them off, and they would take turns turning their back, and somebody would either stare at them or not stare at them. And they do many different iterations of it, and they keep score. And what we found out just in our own little sample of 35 people, I think they did it like 25 times, 30 times, whatever, found out that much greater than chance, everybody was felt like somebody was staring at them when they actually were. So I said, there's something to it. Now, how it actually works, I can't tell you, but it's there. And I had skeptics in the class too. In fact, I had a friend of mine who's a math professor. He was about as materialist as you can get in his mind, in his viewpoint. And he came in there thinking that he was going to be the class skeptic and even debunker. That's kind of what he told me. And I said, no, I welcome you. You're a friend of mine. I want you to be here. By the end of the class, and I don't think this is because of me, I think it's largely because of what we did, the guest speakers and the fellow students. By the end of the class, he was saying, you know what, Bruce? Uh, I think my cat that died 3 years ago is still in the house, the spirit of that cat, because I feel it sometimes, like on my lap or brushing against my leg, and there's nothing there. But I love that cat, and I somehow feel it's still there. Can a cat be a spirit? And I said, sure. It's a living thing, right? It can transition, sure. Yeah. And so he went from, oh, I'm going to, you know, kind of make fun, not in a bad way, but just kind of like poke fun and to, maybe there's something to this. So I think he's more agnostic now
He wanted
than,
permission to talk about that experience. That's
yes,
ultimately what that is.
he had to break through that,
Yes,
the
his
stigma.
own wall. Yeah,
He
yeah.
and he's still, I mean, he's a brilliant mathematician. He's a smart guy and he's got science, but you don't have to exclude one for the other,
Of course,
you
they
know?
they live together. Everything is
Yes.
an interweb essentially of
Yes.
connectedness. Now, before we jump into the Koit zone and wrap up, I'm conscious of time here. I've got
Yeah.
loads more to ask you, so
Yeah.
I'd like to have you back if that's okay. I'll throw it
Yeah.
out there. You don't have to answer now, but because that's putting
No, no,
pressure
I
on you.
can I can be honestly, no, I've enjoyed our conversation. I like the questions you ask. Uh, they're probing questions. I'm not going to say they're necessarily challenging, but not challenging, but in a good way.
I know
That's what
what
I
you
mean.
mean. Yes, and I
Not like
appreciate that.
confrontational.
No, I'm never confrontational. I don't like it
No.
myself. But I do like to
Yeah.
challenge because that's how you
Challenge is
learn,
good.
and you know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so integration. I want to ask about that very phenomenon.
Yeah.
When I think you mentioned this earlier, or it was just something that was in my head. Pieces of you could be lost. Is that right? If you're integrating, is a part of you making way for a part of it to come in?
Uh,
You know, like a puzzle piece, the bit that goes out and
right.
then the bit that goes in. Is that what it is?
It's a it's not that it's lost. Integration means that the ability for you to communicate, the barriers to that communication are largely removed.
Okay.
So it's not that you're losing the barriers, which are guardrails. I mean, maybe you could say them guardrails because we need guardrails in life. I mean, we can't just go around, everybody is beautiful and they don't want to do me any harm and not be protective of yourself, which you obviously can't do that because there are ill-intentioned people that we meet every day. Hopefully not the majority of them, but in a prison that was different because
Sure. Yeah, you've
just
seen the
about
worst, I
everybody,
imagine.
including the guards, by the way. And there's some really terrible
Mm.
story. We don't go into that, but anyway, that could be too. So anyway, yeah, so that integration, that's what, I was careful going into it because I trust Lucy. She's very smart and very experienced. And so I was very careful with it. And I asked Anzar, okay, that doesn't mean I'm going to lose my autonomous self, who I am and who I want to be and what I'm doing. No, no, no. It's just removing the barriers, the barrier, the doubts that become barriers. Because before there's barriers, there's doubts. You doubt, and then you create a barrier to protect yourself, from that, you know. So I was able to do that, and that has made it easier to communicate with them and has allowed this what I call assisted remote viewing. Because when you do remote viewing, which I'm sure you've talked to a lot of people who have researched it, but one of the big problems with remote viewing, and I run into this too, is what you call analytical overlay. Analytical overlay is where your subjective interface reality gets in the way instead of just listening and feeling and taking it all in without judging it, without saying, well, that's preposterous. How can that be? It must be this instead. So you quickly do a jujitsu move and you'd say, no, it's this. And you have to avoid that. So those are barriers that we put up because we're used to looking at the world that way. When we only use about 10% of the information to create our daily realities, breaking down that barrier allows you to have a lot more access. And but for me, that it does expend energy. So that's why I mentioned this integration that leads to better communication with Anzar and Gene and others, by the way. Um, Also is taxing. It's not easy. You would think you get into a meditative state and you're walking in a beautiful, view of the mountains that it would be so serene but when you're doing this, it's pretty intense. And I feel physically drained after it, and I don't remember a lot of it. That's why I record it. Um,
Is it
so
similar to like
it
when you've
comes with
got?
a price. It comes with a price, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
No, that's fair enough. Is it similar to? Because I'm trying to. I always like to put things in what it could be for me. So is it
Yeah.
similar to like when you go on a long car journey and you're having to concentrate for a long sort of time when you're knackered even though you've
Yeah.
done bugger all, if you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Is it
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. It
Awesome.
it it is exhausting mentally, psychically, physically exhausting. It's all of those things, and although it's rewarding, especially when I go back to type up the transcript, I go, I knew that's what we were talking about, but I didn't know all. I fill in the details when I, listen to it, and I go, oh, okay. And so it is, and of course you have to protect yourself. And anybody listening who's thinking of doing this kind of stuff, I always say you need to learn how to turn it off before you learn how to turn it on. Because if you don't know how to turn it off, things could go very badly. So when I do these things, I don't come back and I'm still in my mystical, integrated state of, listening to Anzar. I mean, I can't live my life like that. I can't communicate with my wife or my children or do my job, or whatever. I mean, that's just too weird. I would come off as, something very strange. Maybe I am a little strange anyway, but
Yeah, but that's
still
good. That's
stranger,
good.
yeah, the stranger than I normal. So, so you have to learn how to turn it off. That's very important. And that's very important because I always wondered when I went, why didn't I like to go to parties when I had no ability to control any of this? It was just happening all the time, randomly, frequently. I didn't like to go to parties where there are a lot of people. Part of it is probably I'm probably partly on what they would call on the spectrum, whatever the terminology they use now. Probably so. I can pick up a lot of stuff, but I'd go to a party and I felt very uncomfortable because it's not that I could read people's minds. I think that's a misnomer. What you do is you hear their intentions, and that's in some ways worse because what they're working out in their mind could be different than what their intention is. Their intention is the most important thing. What are they driving at? What do they want? In acting, they call it what is your action as an actor? When you come into a scene, hopefully you don't bump into the furniture like Spencer Tracy said, and you know your lines. But what is your action? You have to know where you're coming from. And those are the intentions. And good actors can do that seamlessly. You don't even know that they're doing it, that they're acting. You forget that they're acting. That's how good they are. But I could read their intentions, and it was very noisy beyond the regular noise of people talking or chattering or music or chairs shuffling or whatever, which it can be distracting. I hear these intentions, and they're often conflicting. And often what people are saying is not what their intentions are, so they're very disingenuous, and I pick up on that, and it's very disheartening. And before you know it, I'm just depressed, and I got to leave. I can't, I don't want to be there. So it's just better not to go in the first place. So what I needed to learn how to do was turn it off. I can go into a party, say, I'm going to turn it off. The radar dish comes down, I put it away, I'm not going to let it up. I have the ability to do that for the most part. Um, and I can go in there and enjoy myself for a brief period of time because I'm not going to,
You don't
I
want to be
don't
there all the
relish it.
time. No.
I don't relish it, but I can withstand it now. So I've learned how to do that. I learned how to turn it off. That's why I said turning it off is better. I'll share this with you too because it's kind of shocking. I had a friend of mine, a psychiatrist, and I told him, I said, is it possible that schizophrenics and people, some people that are psychotic, is it possible that they're also very psychic? They have a lot of psychic abilities, telepathy. Is it possible they could, and not just not know how to deal with it? In other words, not know how to turn it off. And he looked at me and he had this look on his face and he goes, that's a
Oh, you've frozen again.
frightening thought. You know
Ah, there
that?
you are.
I thought about it, yeah, I'm not sure what you heard, but yeah, he was frightened by that thought that that could be a possibility and maybe a new avenue by which you can treat people. How do you get them to come back? There's medications, but maybe there's a different way. Maybe there's
Yeah, maybe it's not an earthly thing as such. You know what I
yes,
mean? It's an external factor that could be addressed. So no, I completely
the
understand that.
the
The
leap of
switching off process.
consciousness could be part of that. That could be part of it. That maybe some of these poor wandering souls out there, and a lot of them are on the streets, hopelessly wandering. Yeah, he was very frightened by that thought, and maybe it changed him. I don't know. I haven't talked to him in a long time, so I don't know if that he did it differently, approached it differently, or whatever. But
Well, maybe you planted a spark in his mind, maybe not. But
yes,
either way, it's a fascinating topic of thought. Okay,
yeah,
we are now gonna enter the Koit zone, and then we'll wrap up. So,
okay,
to
all right.
everyone watching and listening, we are now entering the Koit zone. Koit zone. So, what is your favourite movie, if you have one?
Well, the one that always comes up is Casablanca.
Ah, I
Yeah.
thought you were going to go for a sci-fi film based on what I see behind you.
Well, I love them, but there's something about and it's interesting that it's Morocco, right?
Hmm.
So that's kind of why I've always been attracted, but also the stories I grew up with of World War II and the Nazis, and the decisions that had to be made, and and how troubled characters who are really good guys but are troubled, that kind of thing. I just there's everything about it, the acting, the the patriotism of it, it strikes me in so many different ways when it was made, and yeah, all that. So,
No, fair play, fair play. And
yeah,
speaking of your background, I would be remiss if I didn't mention it and all the wonderful things that I see on there that resonate with me. Stormtroopers, Star Trek,
yeah,
Jesus, obviously, in a packet.
yeah,
All
yeah,
these
I know.
things.
He's still in his box, so he's more valuable.
I want you to pick an item from your background, actually, and tell us the story of it. So anything that's got a story attached.
Okay. I'm not sure what you can see. You pick it, and I will. How about
No,
that?
I want you to pick something that resonates with you that you know has a good story, even if it's just something as simple. Oh, I bought this from this location because I went on holiday there, or anything.
Okay.
You pick it, bring
Uh,
it forward, and show us.
yeah. Okay.
Robbie the robot.
It's actually the same guy who designed Robbie the robot, a Japanese American man. This is the B9 robot from Lost in Space.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 1965 to 68, I believe the series ran. And by the way, I'm Facebook friends with the guy who played Will Robinson,
Bill.
uh, Bill
Bill
Mumy.
Mooney.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. He was a fellow musician too. He's a
That's
musician.
right. Yeah.
So anyway, this is the B9 robot. I love robots, and you can't see it, but on the other side here on a shelf, I have about 25 robots. I'm fascinated by robots.
Is that because of
Uh,
that TV show?
I think it's because of this TV show and all the
Mm.
sci-fi, Robbie the Robot and all the other, sci-fi robot shows. So I've been fascinated by this. And what, and this kind of was early on. I started collecting the things from my childhood, toys, things that reminded me of my childhood, because behind me is really like a big security blanket. It like helps me.
I've
It
got one
helps
next
me.
door.
Yeah, it helps
A
me.
Star
It
Wars room.
helps. Yeah, yeah, no, all that stuff. Star Wars, the original Star Trek. I like some of the newer Star Trek too. But anyway, so this robot means a lot to me, and oddly I feel kind of protected the fact that it's back there. And there's a number of things that are back there that actually give me some sense of protection. But this is the B9 robot. He's never called the B9 robot, but officially that's who he is. He's just called Robot. And yeah,
I
from
like
that
it. Good
series.
story. Good story. And
Yeah,
it reminds me to
pretty
say
cool.
this then, which is anyone who collects things is essentially surrounding themselves with nostalgia or positivity or a feeling of
Yes.
something nice. So actually,
Yes.
it's a very good thing. It's actually collections, isn't it? Sometimes you can
Yeah.
think of people as hoarding things. Maybe that's
Yeah.
the far end of the spectrum. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
And
Um,
it's not that it has some intrinsic value. I mean, it means something to me on a very
correct.
almost a spiritual level. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I like it. I'm going to ponder on that thought for quite some
mhm.
time. What food items do you loathe?
I like a lot of food, but uh, there is, I would say, I don't like squash. I have an adverse reaction. It's a physical reaction to it. I don't know what it is about it, although I do like pumpkin pie, which is a form of squash, but I
Hmm.
think it's because of all the spices and probably the sugar that's in it. It maybe does something to it, but squash is something that I do not care for. I just have never cared for it. So,
No, that's fair enough. So that does not
yeah,
enter your house. Fair play.
yeah.
Dry or wet shave? Although at the moment, clearly nothing.
Nothing at the moment, but no, no, wet shave. Yeah, when I do, yeah, it has to be. Yeah, I don't care for the machines, the dry machines. Yeah.
Are we talking about your legs now, or up here?
Yeah, well, that's another matter. Yeah.
Yeah, which we won't go into right now.
We want not in this broadcast. Yeah.
What thing or item do you use the most? Let's go
What
with a
we're communi
possession of yours.
Yeah, the thing we're communicating on right now, because
Ah,
if I'm not doing what we're doing, having this pleasant conversation through these computer means, I'm writing. So this is my writing station. So I do all my writing right here. And yeah, so this laptop computer in front of me is it's my instrument. It's my, yeah, like if it would be, like Beethoven's piano.
yeah, this is where all the concertos are written. Fair play to you.
Yes,
And that's a good
exactly.
answer. I thought
Yeah,
you might say toilet for some reason, so I wrote that down just in case.
that's that it is in Norwegian we call the toilet uh there's a nickname for a toilet. It's nødvendig, which means necessity.
Oh yeah, you have to. Yeah, I like
It's
it.
necessity.
Yeah.
Try living without it. It's not nice.
You've kind of answered this one in a way when you
Yeah.
mentioned Bill Mummy, but I'll ask the question: which TV or film star or musician would you love to meet? Actually, no, you haven't answered that, but it's similar.
Yeah, well, as much as I like, he would be fascinating to talk to. I feel I know a lot about him already. Uh, I, the original Star Trek, of course, everybody likes, the original characters, but I was always drawn to, and maybe because she was my first crush, would be Nichelle Nichols,
Oh,
Uhura. And I do have a figure of her up, not behind here, but on the other side. I have there's more stuff over there that you can't see, but it's just filled with stuff. But anyway,
excellent.
yeah, Lieutenant Uhura, which she in the last, I guess, movie, she was Commander Uhura, but she passed away just a few years ago, sadly. Um, but I always found her fascinating and her story fascinating, how she wanted to quit the series because she didn't like, struggles with the lines or whatever. And Martin Luther King got a hold of her. Dr. Martin Luther King got a hold of her and said, "You can't. You're providing hope. What the future is going to be like." He said, "It's so important what you're doing, even if it's a smaller role. Keep doing it." And I admired her courage. And yeah, she just kept going, and she was very important. And she was my first crush before I knew why. I didn't know why I liked her so much. I mean, now I know why I liked her so much, but then at the time I didn't know
No, that's
when I
fair
was
enough.
eight
I
years
like
old.
it. It's a good answer.
Yeah.
Okay, open all of your chocolates and sweets straight away and binge on them, or leave them and have a small bit per day. So which one are you?
I've done both, but I try to, and I do have sweets every day. I'm quite fond of chocolate, actually, especially, but I
Good
try to
man.
ration myself. And I've learned as I've gotten older, I'm less bingy and more rationy. Yeah, and maybe it's just my palate has changed. That's probably what it is. But I
Has it
still
moved?
eat.
Has it moved to dark chocolate? This is an important question.
I like all. I except white chocolate. I don't even think
Oh
it's
wow.
chocolate as far as I know.
No, it's
I'm
butter,
not
isn't it? It's
sure.
good butter.
It's kind of waxy to me. I don't really like it. But I like milk chocolate. I like semi-sweet, and I like dark chocolate. I like it all. So
The reason I mention that, right, is because I ask so many people in the paranormal world about chocolates, and the vast majority, and it is vast majority, are tending towards dark chocolate.
yeah,
There's got to
I
be
do.
some sort of
I do
reasoning
have
there.
right off to the side here, which I don't know if you can see, but I have semi-sweet chocolate chips right here
Oh, nice one.
that I
Get
snack on.
them down, yeah, yeah. Right.
I'll have
What's
one right now if you don't mind.
yeah, go for it. I have a whole bag full. Like,
Exactly.
what scares you, Bruce?
Um,
Diabetes?
besides losing a loved one or something,
Oh
that
yeah,
that
yeah,
would be
good
kind
point.
of a given for everybody. But beyond that, demonic stuff, I've had experiences which I hinted at before, and that is truly frightening. And that's why I always warn people, learn how to turn it off before you turn it on, because you don't know what you're going to encounter. And if you're a very sensitive person, you have to protect yourself. And that's why, I watch these shows, these paranormal shows, ghost shows, whatever. And people say, yeah, we think there's a demonic entity living in this basement. That's all you have to say. I'm not going in that basement. I don't care what you say. You could give me $1 million. I'm not going in that basement. I know what's going to happen. I'm sensitive. I can do all the protection I want. It's still going to impact me. And I've been physically hurt by these kind of entities. So no, thank you. That
Excellent.
scares me. When
Well, not
physical,
excellent, but yeah, I appreciate it.
yeah,
Okay, well, I'm going to
yeah,
write that
terrible.
one down, and then
Yeah.
whether you're open to talk about it, we can discuss it next time if that's okay with you.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's fine. It's quite a tale.
Super lush. Okay, thank you for that one.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite comedian?
Why there's so many. There's a guy that he passed away a number of years ago. Now I can't remember. He wasn't as well known, but I'll just say I always liked Jonathan Winters from when I was a child. I like Jonathan Winters because he was so non sequitur and so odd and strange, but and so funny. I mean, there's nobody really like him. And actually, Robin Williams was very, you know, thought that he took a lot of what he got from Jonathan Winters, and they became really good friends. Um, so Jonathan Winters, but I like comedy a lot, and I like international comedy. I who are if they're speaking in English, although in Norwegian I can understand that too. So the Norwegian humor is very different, but I enjoy it quite a bit.
Excellent.
You
Well, I
know,
have no idea who Jonathan Winters is, but I've written it down and I'm going to look it up
yeah.
afterwards because
He
I
was a
never
very
seem
good
to.
artist too. He was a lot of people didn't know what a talented artist he was. He had art exhibitions too, and he also was mentally ill at one point and committed himself. And he was a World War II veteran. So
It's very common, isn't it, amongst comedians to be that way because that's
I
why the
think
comedy's
so.
there.
I
Yeah.
think it's a difficult business. You're all alone up there. It's not like being in a band, which I'm in the band. You got if something goes wrong. Oh, it's the bass player. Oh, it's the drummer. No, it's me. Okay, but we can
No, it's
spread
always
it
their
out.
fault. It's never your
Yeah, it's
fault.
always the yeah, it's that guy. So, and you're a comedian, you bomb. Hey,
Yeah, it's
you're
on you.
all by yourself. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. As a basic question, eggs. What is the best way to cook an egg?
Man, I like them. Growing up in a Norwegian household, we had boiled eggs all the time. Uh, between hard and soft boiled, I really
Yes.
like a good boiled egg for breakfast. I do like fried eggs too, and usually over medium. Uh, but the more traditional way Norwegians do it is boiled eggs. So,
I'm having 2 or 3 boiled eggs when I leave this room in about five, ten
okay.
minutes. So I just want you
Yeah.
to know that. Yeah. So I'm going to
Yeah,
do it
very
exactly
good.
the way you said it as well, just between soft and hard. So that's
Yes,
how I'm having them.
exactly.
Final question in the Koit zone. If you could live your life again, are you doing anything differently? Or are you happy with the outcome?
Well, that's always a good question because you wouldn't be who you are without all these different
That's the
paths that
answer.
you have
Yes.
taken. So I'm not a person that has those kind of, I think I am who I am because of what I've done. I probably would have made slight adjustments. I would have tried to soften the blow for some of the decisions I made that hurt people. Um, I don't mean necessarily physically hurt people, but I think I would maybe still made the same decisions, but tried to explain it better, you
Yeah.
know, but realize I had to go in a different direction, and just handle that a little bit more effectively and more conscientiously. But it probably still would have been the same outcome. Talking about relationships, because oftentimes you get into a relationship and it's just not going to work. You just don't know that it's not going to work at the beginning, no matter how hard you try. So and so I might have been a little bit more adept at that, realizing, okay, we're in this for this amount of time. This is our phase. We're going to learn from each other, and then we're going to move on, and we outgrow each other, whatever. But that's very logical, and that's very hard to do. Not many people can do
In the
that
moment,
or
yeah.
agree
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
You know,
Agreed.
you're my 2 year relationship. Now I'm going on to my 4 year.
Yeah, you can't tell them that on day one, can you?
No, 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 that's pretty hard.
Yeah, yeah. I just realised what that question actually is when you were talking there. It's just, I'm really just asking you, do you like you?
Yes.
Because that's ultimately what it is, isn't it? I think.
That took a long time. It takes a long time to like yourself and love yourself and forgive yourself. And that's man, that is a hard thing to do. That is a really hard thing to do. So
Yes,
the
I've been
sooner the
pondering that a
better.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Right, that's the end of the Coit Zone. So thank you for travelling through that with me, which leaves us
Yeah.
final 2 questions before we wrap up. So, what else do you like to do in your downtime? Any activities or guilty pleasures? And I know you've mentioned music, so that must be there.
Yes, music, songwriting, playing with my bandmates. In fact, Friday we're meeting. We're working on a rock opera.
Oh, nice.
Loosely based on the life of Timothy Leary, but set into a post-apocalyptic future. It's wild, it's crazy, it's fun, and they're great guys. So we're going to do that. Uh, I do like I like my wife's has a vintage warehouse, so I like what we call picking.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, not
American pickers.
expense.
Yeah.
Yeah, not exactly expensive antiques, but like people oftentimes throw stuff away. A lot of the stuff we get, people have thrown away, and I repurpose it and repair it, and she sells it.
Fair play.
And we don't make a ton of money, but I just, it's part of that. She has a mission. She doesn't like things to be thrown away. She think it's, go into a landfill. People could repurpose it, reuse it. And I like that. We share that in common. That's one of the things that binds us is we both enjoy that very much.
Yeah, I do with Tiff as well. We don't like throwing things away. We use it till it's
Yeah.
absolutely destroyed and then get a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that. Love it. Final question for you then, Bruce. What project are you currently working on right now? Is there a project?
Yeah, a number of things. One is the rock opera. Uh, the other is a couple of music videos. I'm working with I've already had the songs recorded, and it's kind of a solo project, but I'm using a Ukrainian sand artist to
Oh,
do
I
the
know.
video.
The
Have you ever
resonance
seen?
plates.
Yes,
Yes.
she's amazing. And she is living in Mexico because she was living, it was too dangerous for her. She didn't have electricity, she didn't have heat, she didn't have water where she was, and everything was getting, it's just awful for those poor people. Um, but so she moved, she went to Mexico, joined a circus, and did that. She's a performance artist too. She does this as a part of a performance. But she did some of my comic book stories in my last comic, and she's doing the music video for me. So I'm working on that, and I don't have another book well, there is a book that I'm being compelled to write, but it's kind of a textbook or I call them anti-textbooks because I don't like textbooks, um, for my paranormal class. So I've already started working. So that's kind of uh, going on at the same time. And
Nice.
comic books, yeah, my third, I do two comic book series. One is Dr. Jekyll, Alien Hunter. The third one we're working on right now with an artist from Poland. She's a very young lady, very talented. And then on the opposite end of experience, a 78-year-old underground artist from Cleveland, Ohio, is working on number three of my Snark comic. So right now. So I got both those. Yeah, so that's a couple of things that I'm doing.
Excellent. Well, thank you for letting us know about those. And on that
Yeah.
basis, actually, I want to invite anyone listening or watching to check out the links in the description to Bruce's site, where you can actually see, and there's links there to buy all those projects, etc.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for
No,
that.
well, no worries. Bruce, thank you ever so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I really look forward to speaking to you on all the other topics I've written down that I thought we might cover today. I knew they were big topics, so we probably
Yeah.
wouldn't cover it all, but that's for
Yeah.
the future. But yeah, thank you for your time. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And to everyone listening and watching, goodbye, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
To watch other KoitCast episodes, please click the image top left. To subscribe to my channel, please click the image top right. Please like and share to help KoitCast grow, and most importantly of all, please click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.